Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. I've got an incredibly special guest, a great guitar player, songwriter, producer who's just created tons of amazing music over the years with John Ashton from the Psychedelic Furs. Most well known from the Psychedelic Furs. He's got a great band out now called Satellite Paradiso. We'll talk about that. A couple of quick announcements. I want to thank our mutual friend, Gail Ann Dorsey, for connecting us. Gail, thank you very much. Also, make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and that little emoji that looks like a bell. That helps us get recommended by YouTube. And thank you for your support in doing that. Real quick on John, as I said, he's most well known as a guitarist for the Psychedelic Furs. He was with the band from 78 to 2007, playing and writing on all our albums during this time. He's originally from London. He's also worked as a sideman and a producer, working with artists like Marianne Faithfull, Sisters of Mercy, Red Betty, and Seven Color Sky. He also has a solo project called Satellite Paradiso. The band was touring regularly before COVID. They have one album out. It's a phenomenal record. If you're It's like a guitar orgasm. I mean, his playing on there is just awesome. The sounds and the layers of sounds. There's not a lot of people that can do this like that. Amazing guitar riffs, psychedelic slash alternative music. And as I said, I'm just repeating myself. John's incredibly skilled at getting fantastic guitar sound and leveraging effects to create a very strong sonic landscape, which I have no ability to do at all. So thanks, John. I appreciate all the great music over the years, and thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Uh, so you're like 20 years old when you joined the Furs. What were you doing before that musically? And early on, like when you first got together, what was your impression of you go to auditions or you start playing with guys. Did you think, hey man, we kind of have something here, or this is never going to work? Or what were your impressions early on?
Well, I'd been living, I was born in London and my parents moved around a lot. And I ended up living in Leicestershire when I was about 15 to about 19, 20. And then the punk thing happened. I was up in a town called Lutterworth, and I had a friend called Dave Martin, who subsequently went off to play with Chelsea uh, for a long time, and had a band called The Smart as well. But he was one of those guys that he had all the records. So he had the guitar and he had the amp, and I'd go around to his and we'd hang out and we'd listen to uh, the Stooges, Velvet Underground, a lot of T-Rex, and in between that there's some other bands. But we kind of we hung out a bit, and he left to go to seek his fame and fortune in yeah, around the summer of, I think, the summer of 78. The punk thing had kind of really kind of happened already. um and I let me see, I was in London beginning of 78, something like that. Anyway, so I might have my time thing a little bit off, but I remember hanging out with him and a guy called Simon Vitesse in Covent Garden at a place owned by Andy Chizowski, who ran the Roxy Club, and he was like a mentor to a lot of bands. And so from that period of early 78, late 77, early 78, I was just sort of hanging around, going to clubs like the Marquee, or the Vortex, or occasionally if I could blag my way into some other show at the Roundhouse or Dingwalls or something like that, I would go. And then we'd always end up at a place called the Speakeasy, which wasn't really a punk hangout, but it was like an after hours drinking club that was populated mostly by visiting rock stars from America and the odd rock star from England. So you'd be rubbing shoulders with you know Johnny Thunders, or uh, uh, if like a band like Rush were in town, they would come down there. And then there was just a mix of like old rockers and punks and um, um, There was Bon Scott. That was one of his favorite hangouts. That's where he
That's interesting.
unfortunately drank too much. And also Mark Bolan used to go there a lot as well. So it's one of those like after hours kind of, hangs that everyone would end up in. So I got to meet a lot of people there. I met Lemmy there one night, and
What was he like?
he's great. He's great.
Talk about
He's
a guy with filled with energy, right?
he was just always on his own in the corner by the bar, playing the slot machine.
That's funny.
He would, he'd constantly be playing that. He would have like a pile of 2 shilling pieces, which were like quarters or whatever, and he would just be playing that all night. And yeah, I
That's
have some
cool.
stories that are probably not appropriate for the podcast.
There's nothing that's not appropriate here. Honestly, you can say or do whatever you want.
Well, suffice to say, I got to know him pretty well. So there's a lot of punk luminaries would hang out down there, and I bands Billy Curry from Ultravox. I used to see him a lot, and I always used to say to him. He came up to me a few years afterwards. We kind of crossed paths. He said, you always said you were going to be in a band, and hey, man, you did it. You did it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I did. I
Yeah,
did.
that's really cool.
And at that time, I think I don't know how it happened, but I joined a band called The Unwanted,
That's a
which
great, what a great name for a punk
yeah, yeah.
glam. What a great name, man. That's very cool.
They were on the original Roxy album, Live at the Roxy, with X-Ray Specs and maybe I don't know, I can't remember all the name of the bands, but they were definitely one of them. And so I joined the, I don't know, fifth or sixth iteration of that band,
Right.
and rehearsed with them a few times. Did a couple of shows that weren't, particularly great on my behalf, but there was a recording session that the drummer Paul Wilson never showed up to at the time, and so that was kind of like the end of the band. That was the end of the Unwanted for me and for the Unwanted at that time. And a few months later, there's a knock on the door, and I lived in a flat in Harringay, North London, so you might have rang the bell anyway. But you know, and it's Paul Wilson, the drummer from the Unwanted X, and he said, I said, what happened to you? He said, oh, my girlfriend, all right, so it's that one of those, he said, but I'm going to go and rehearse with this band called the Psychedelic Furs. They're just doing a show at the Green Man in Portland Street in 2 weeks on November 30th. And here's a tape, and you should listen to them, and I think you'll really like them. They're a bit weird, he said, but I think you'll like them. They're looking for another instrumentalist. So I said, all right, okay. My girlfriend at the time, Tracy Collier, used to work for Jazz Summers, who, amongst other things, he originally was a radiologist. He passed away a couple of years ago. He got cancer. I guess that's radiology will do that to you.
Yeah.
But he was a booker and an agent for folk bands in the 70s. One of them was Richard Digance. I don't know if you ever heard of him, and John Martin.
Yeah, John Martin, of course. Yeah.
Martin. But then when the punk thing happened, he kind of switched gears and started managing a band called the Stookers, who were another seminal punk band. He managed to ruin them by trying to turn them into a power pop band. So he took everything that was good about them and totally, just it was an experiment in like what not to do with a band. Anyway, so she had been living with him, just like renting a room, working for him, and up in North London, and so she was, she's my girlfriend at the time, and we're living in this flat in Harringay, and I'm pretty much like I'm working at a guitar place down the road, I bought
On
my
that street, that famous street with all the guitar shops.
No, no, it wasn't down. It wasn't Denmark Street. It
Yeah,
was actually
Denmark.
North. It was in North London. Um, but the guy made basically was like a wheeler dealer, and there's all these dodgy people coming in with guitars, money exchanging hands, and I ended up buying this 62. It was an SG Junior, but it was the Les Paul model.
Okay.
That
Yep.
was my guitar at the time, and I had a Dan Electro, like a plug-in, like kind of a fuzz box type thing that I would just plug into that, and then plug straight into this little amp I had, and I would like pretty much just play records all day and all night, and jam along to them. So that was kind of my MO at that time, in mid '78, late '78, and so I said, anyway, I'll be back in 2 weeks. Give it a listen, see what you think. So I put the tape, after he was gone, I put the tape on, and I really liked it. It was there were early versions of "We Love You," Black's Chaos Radio, which was didn't make it on the US domestic release, but was on the original United Kingdom release. Maybe Flowers, another one. They were very much of the punk, the punk edgy sort of like harder songs. Maybe Pulse as well. I'm not sure, but anyway. So again, I'm not going to knock on the desk this time, but there's a knock. There's a knock on the door, and it's Paul, and he's like, "Are you coming? I'm going to rehearse with him," and it was my birthday. It was my 21st birthday. November 30th. And I said, nah, I just want to stay at home and maybe have a drink and, jam out. Because, no, come on. And my girlfriend, Tracy, said, you're going. You're definitely going. So off we trudged to this place. I think it was in Waterloo. I believe it belonged to Knox from the Vibrators. I think it was a rehearsal studio there, under the arches there in Waterloo. And we showed up, and there was Richard Butler, Tim, his brother, on bass, Roger Morris on guitar, Duncan Kilburn on
saxophone,
and Paul Wilson playing drums. So I got in there and watched them play for a bit, and Richard's like, oh, you'll get us some beers. So we went out, we bought like a 12-pack of Swan Lager, brought that back in, and they drank that. I might have had one or two. And then a bit later, you want to get us some more beers? So I went out again and bought like 12-pack, drank this. Do you want to jam with us? Said Richard. So I did. So I can't remember what it was.
You had your guitar. You bought your guitar with you.
Oh yeah. I took
Okay.
my guitar with me. Yeah, because I knew that there was going to be like some kind of a test.
Yes.
And so we jammed, and smiles all around. And Richard said, "Do you want to join the band?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then he came home with Tracy and me back to our flat. They stayed up all night chatting. I went to bed for some reason. I think it's probably too many Swan Lagers. But he was hardcore. So next day, Tracy's managing the band.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So then we went. So this would be November '78. Then pretty much the very next week in December, we went into rehearsals at a place called H&H Studios, which is Halligan and Heap in North London, again, in Highbury. And we rehearsed there pretty much for 2 months, on and off, not every single day, but at least a couple of times a week. She booked us a show at a place called the Rock Garden in Covent Garden, which no longer sadly exists. It's now an Apple store. I was there last year with Roger, who I had arranged to meet. Roger
cool.
Morris, and he goes, "Have you seen the Rock Garden?" I'm like, no, he goes, it's an Apple store now.
Oh man.
Like,
let me just tell people, is it fair to say Covent Garden, for a reference, is kind of like the Greenwich Village, sort of
Um,
in vibe.
Covent Garden was actually a market. It was a flower market
Mhm.
mostly. It was known for that, and then a lot of trading going on. It was kind of a little bit run down, but it was in the center of London.
Yeah.
Um, so I the areas in London didn't quite equate to the same way as they do in New York City, but Covent Garden was very close to Soho, where all the clubs were. So, and very close to Shaftesbury Avenue, where all the theatres were. So you could say it was sort of somewhere between 48th Street, Broadway, and the
I just
village.
remember being there in like in '93, and it was all these markets. I was buying bootleg CDs. It was
Right.
very like hippie, just like
Yeah.
laid back, creative.
Right.
Yeah, it was. I liked being there. It was nice.
Yeah, but originally a flower market, and
Interesting.
pretty much dead at night, but very much awake during the mornings and into the early day. But now it's just like it's just like a shoppers, like a big open sort of mall with tons of different vendors there, and
Yeah.
selling all kinds of things. So anyway, so that was our first show at the Rock Garden on February the 14th, Valentine's Day.
God, your memory is like phenomenal.
1979, and I think our next show after that was at a place called it might have been the Windsor Castle, which was a kind of a pretty well-known music venue there. The Specials, and I actually know Madness played there a lot.
Okay.
It's one of those old pub rock kind of pubs, like the Hope and Anchor played there. Um, the Windsor Castle, the Brecknock, which was in North London, who always spelled our name wrong every time. So, this week's a psychedelic forest.
Awesome.
Lady Guitarist, she's just like, just write it down, put us up. We played the Music Machine. We got some opening slots. We got a buzz. We had the demo tape that was around at that time, and Tracy and I had the brilliant idea of going up to the BBC and meeting John Peel.
Yeah.
We did. We saw him come in and said, "Yeah, we're a band called Psychedelic Furs. This is our tape." All right, yeah, I'll give it a listen. And then a week later, we got our first John Peel session.
Wow. What was he like?
It was he was just like he sounds on the radio. It's very stoic, a little bit condescending to certain groups he didn't like,
Really?
but not in a mean way. Not like Bob Harris would be condescending on the old Great Whistle Test.
Okay.
He wouldn't say anything or just raise his eyebrows. When the New York Dolls were on. Because
That's so weird. You'd think like
it wasn't Pink Floyd or Quintessence or one of these other,
the
groups.
Pink Floyd. They always called them the Pink Floyd. I remember that hearing even recently hearing them. It's just a different thing, man.
Right, right. But John Peel was a real champion of the the punk scene.
Yeah.
He played a lot of reggae, played a lot of dub. He would play a lot of very obscure sort of punk bands that would never make it or would only make it in a certain way. He loved The Fall, he loved Joy Division, he loved Swell Maps. He wouldn't really play anything by Generation X, for instance, because he considered them to be a little bit too poppy.
Okay.
Or he might have done, but he didn't really. It wasn't one. You could tell that it wasn't one of his bands.
Yeah.
He was actually, instrumental, I guess, in a way, in getting us signed, because once we had that session out, that first session, it got repeated again like 2 weeks later, I think, or a week later. And our shows, we got bigger and, a bigger following on each show. We would do opening slots at the Music Machine for different bands. Can't really remember which ones they were now, but we played steadily throughout the spring and the summer, and by September the following year, so about 10 months after I joined the band, we were signed to CBS Records. It was actually
Wow.
Epic Records, which was a subsidiary of CBS, were the label that signed us, and Howard Thompson was running Epic at that point. He was the A&R man at Epic, and then they switched, and he went on to Columbia, but it was really just the same kind of company. And at the signing, so it was Howard Thompson, Muff Winwood, who was also an A&R guy at Sony, or it wasn't Sony then, it was CBS, still CBS, sorry.
They're related to.
Muff Winwood was Steve Winwood's brother.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And he played. He was famous for having produced the first Dire Straits single, "Sultans of Swing."
Oh, okay.
So he had some clout, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is a tape that exists of us playing at the Music Machine where you can hear them going, "We should sign him. We should definitely sign him."
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we played the Nashville, which was Nashville Rooms, which is also kind of a big venue for us at the time. And we packed it out, and that's when they showed up en masse, and we were signed within the week.
That's so cool. How did that feel? If you could even remember that.
It felt great. We had a
Yeah.
huge party, and everyone was there. That I can remember. It was a very crazy time, but we had this huge party, and then we went to work. We went into I think we went in to the studio with Steve Lillywhite to Rack Studios in early December of '79, and then we finished up the mixes once we went across through the holidays, the week we took off or whatever. I remember listening to that record, the mixes, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again throughout that period of time. And just immersing myself into everything. And so then we come back, and he mixes the record, and he decided. Well, we were kind of like a bunch of like we all drank too much for a start. We were having far too much fun. It was really difficult to get anything done with everybody shouting more me, more me, more me. So Steve decided to mix the record starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, knowing full
Nobody
well
was there.
nobody would be there
Yeah.
except me. I showed up, and
Oh, so
I ended up, sitting through the whole mixes, and he said, "I think it's a great way to wake up to a mix." I don't know if he was just kidding, but it seemed to work.
yeah.
It was a highly experimental album for us. For me as a guitar player, I was trying different things out. I had a guitar that it was a John Birch that I had bought from John Mackay, Susie and the Banshees, who he didn't want it anymore. He was going to play a Hagstrom guitar.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then he left the band, which was kind of a shame. But that's another story. But anyway, so I was very interested in synthesizers as well at the time, and there was a company on Denmark Street, and I can't remember the name of it. I'm sure my keyboard playing friends would know it. It might have been Rod Argent's keyboard center, but they had an ARP, the ARP Odyssey, which was like
I don't.
it's basically like a long big box about this big with like faders and sliders all over it, and it was monophonic as far as I
Okay.
recall. It was the early days of synthesizers, but they had an ARP Avatar, which was the guitar version, and it came with a pickup, and I put the pickup between the bridge pickup and the bridge itself, and mounted it on there, and there was a separate little wire you could plug into that, and then plug into the ARP, which I had no idea how to operate the thing. I was just like, making all these different sounds with it. Some worked, some didn't, but it had a setting on it called a hex fuzz, because there were 6 little points on the pickup, and supposedly it would process each string separately, hexaphonic
Right.
fuzz. And so the beginning of like songs like India with that swell, that's the ARP Avatar
That's the hex with the
mixed,
hexaphonic fuzz.
yeah,
Man,
mixed with
that's really cool.
flanging, a little bit of delay, and then different speakers.
So this was like your first foray into experimenting in a much broader way with sounds and
Sure,
landscapes.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah.
I had a
Uh,
question. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was going to say, prior to that, I had tried a Roland synthesizer guitar out, which had all these buttons on it.
Uh-huh.
It looked like a Les Paul that had been sort of like, bastardized with all these, like, looked like a Bontempi organ with, like, I think you could get a rhythm thing on it as well. Yeah, totally not right, really. But I wanted to do it. I was a big Roxy Music fan, so I was kind of, I wanted to be Eno and Phil Manzanera at the same time.
Hey, that's a great goal, man. Right? What's
Yeah,
wrong with that?
yeah, I failed miserably in both counts. But anyway,
I don't know about that, man. I had a question. The first being produced by Steve Lillywhite on your first record, that's a pretty big acknowledgement that the record label had high hopes. I mean, was really behind you guys, or was he not Steve Lillywhite at that time?
he was Steve Lillywhite, but he wasn't Steve Lillywhite at that
Yeah. Okay.
point. But at that point, I mean, he had recorded Susie and the Banshees, first album, Scream. He had done, I think he had done an XTC album. I think
Okay.
he might have was about to embark on the second XTC album, Drums and Wires. I know he produced that. Uh, he was just a man about town, and he seemed to be getting. He was young. He came from the school of. He'd gone to EMI Studios and worked as a lab, as a sound technician in a brown coat.
They showed. I saw a video of that recent. I was watching. It was amazing. It was either it was a documentary about somebody over there, and they showed the evolution, and they made a point to say, here in Britain, we'd literally have these guys that were like scientists in lab coats. They
Yeah,
were like completely stoic, like it was very like surgical almost for
yeah.
them.
It might have been Jeff Emmerich. And he wrote a book, Here, There, and Everywhere: My Life Recording the Beatles, and he basically changed the recording process.
Oh wow.
He's the one that brought the tape machines into the control room. Normally
Okay.
they were on the fourth floor, they were on the second floor, and
They talked
obviously
about that. Yeah.
you had to call up on the phone, press play, and press
Holy
stop.
smokes.
And they had the brown coats, yeah, they were brown coats. I say brown shirts, brown coats, who were they were like the union guys. They would set up the mic. This is where the mic goes. Goes here. There's another one that goes over there. And that's it. You weren't allowed to touch it. And then
Wow.
the guys in the white coats were the engineers, and there would be George Martin in a sport coat and a cravat. Yeah, it's definitely old school.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fantastic book because it kind of shows just that book by Jeff Emmerich just shows to how the process of modern recording changed. By the time we were making records with Steve Lillywhite, we were, we were already, that revolution had happened. The 70s had been and gone, and these fantastic studio albums had been made. The
Yeah.
Pink Floyds and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, it was a sign that we were being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And the record company in London, uh, it kind of sort of we made that record, and then we toured it, and we had some success, a little bit of success with the first album, but then we went straight in and recorded Talk 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 in '81, and that was a further foray into
That was massive.
sonic possibilities, with Steve, um, and his engineer Phil Thornalley, who we used on both records. And Phil actually went on to play in a band called Johnny Hates Jazz, and then ended up writing or co-writing the Natalie Imbruglia song, the huge song that I forget what it's called, but it's the one where she's lying naked on the floor. You'll know, you'll check it out. That's a huge hit. He had big ears. He was a good guy.
Once, okay, so 81, Talk comes out, 82, Forever Now. Both seminal albums with really big single hits on them. You got Pretty in Pink on there, Dumb Waiters, Love My Way. How did that success, that sudden like explosion impact you? Anyway, good, bad, or otherwise?
Well, it's really strange because, you know, when Talk was released, the record company said, we don't hear a hit. They didn't hear Pretty in Pink. Pretty in Pink actually became a hit in '85 once Molly Ringwald had played that album to.
What was it, the cult? What was that song? What was that movie?
Oh, well, it was called Pretty in Pink.
Right. It was a Pretty in Pink movie. Right.
Yeah, with
Right.
John Hughes. She played it for
Right.
John Hughes,
Right.
and and then so you know, we didn't have a success with that song or that album immediately. Although in America, in England, it got panned. It got panned quite seriously by certain journalists.
Why?
Because journalism, music journalism, was also more important somehow than the music itself. So there was a particular journalist, Paul DeNoyer, who was later on touting bands like Frankie Goes to Hollywood. But for each track that his review of each of the tracks on Talk, he would just put a song by somebody else that was supposedly better. So although we didn't get immediate success in England, in America, it just took off.
Those songs were all over the radio, man.
Yeah, it was all over the radio.
Yeah.
It was true alternative music. It was
Totally
played on K-Rock. It's getting played on all the college stations because we didn't have college stations in England. We just had the BBC.
right.
If you didn't have a hit, you know, as such, then you know you were just fodder. So you know, we had a huge success in America with it, and then followed that up, not with as hits as such, but songs that were getting played a lot. But the following record, Forever Now, that was our first hit, Love My Way.
Right.
That was huge.
Massive.
Yeah, and at that point, the band had changed. Roger and Duncan were no longer in the band. We introduced a cello, and Sheldon playing cello on the album. We used horns by a dear departed friend of mine, Gary Window. I became friends with him. He was a friend of Todd's. He was an English player who had come to America and lived here for a long time. He had played with Robert Fripp in Centipede, and he played with Robert Wyatt a lot as well. He was a real jazz musician. Unfortunately, he couldn't come to tour with us when we left to go to Australia and Canada. He had to get a sub for Canada, and when we went to Australia, he found us Miles Williams, and then Miles ended up staying. But I miss Gary. I stayed friends with him for a long time, up until his untimely demise.
I noticed you guys got equal songwriting credit on pretty much all the music. You almost never see that.
Well, we did up until Mirror Moves. And at that point, I was living in United Kingdom, in London, actually in Tunbridge in Kent. I just had a baby girl. I was living, you know, out of the way of, you know, just wasn't living in London anymore.
Right.
I would go there to work, but and Richard and Tim were living in the States, and we would pass demos to each other via the mail.
Isn't that amazing? You think the thought of shipping demos in the mail now, it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like a, you know.
Our internet took 2 weeks, you know.
I love that.
And I felt Richard wanted to claim more of the songwriting for himself, and so we kind of were like, that album was like a 50-50, although really, in all honesty, all the albums were like that. And his choice to change the songwriting to make the songwriting with us was always very nebulous. We would like, one of us would come up with a riff, the other one would copy part of that, take it as a vocal melody.
Mhm.
Richard felt that he deserved more, and so the songwriting got split, like either Butler or Butler Ashton on that
Right.
album, and then it reverted back again to the Psychedelic Furs for Mirror Moves and the rest of the albums, mostly because it just caused a lot of fights, and it wasn't really fair. It wasn't a fair way of divvying it up, and even though um, at the time Richard may have felt that he contributed more, um, he really he was just a part of that whole thing. He couldn't have done it without Tim or myself. I challenged him to find a better guitar solo for Heaven than the one I played, or
Yeah.
I really pushed for the way that Ghost in You sounded. We had a synthesis by the name of Ed Buller, who coincidentally had written the marimba part for Love My Way,
Okay.
um, in a demo. I never got credited for it,
Well,
and so like these kind of like Todd ended up playing the marimba on it, but really it was a part that was already written by Ed, and he never got the credit for it, and he never got the credit for helping write the Ghost in You, the
wow.
melody line, you know. So there was a lot of dissent suddenly, but it just became very weird, very dark, and I was really not happy about it. Um,
You were pretty much content with having everybody give it a credit because
yeah,
it's a
I mean,
collaborative process. I often wonder, like, you look at Jagger Richards, right? And of course, they've written so many great songs, but I always, even as a young kid, when I was like, God, does Charlie Watts not add anything here? Or, you know what I'm saying?
right,
I
yeah,
always wondered, like, about that way
yeah,
before I understood it, the financial implications.
yes, yes. Well, that is true. Talking to Jagger and Richards and going back to Jazz Summers, who was like my girlfriend at the time, Tracy's mentor. Uh, he ended up managing the Verve,
Okay. Yeah. I know
and they
that
had
band.
that song "Bittersweet Sympathy," Symphony,
Mhm.
and that got that that became a whole lawsuit with Jagger and Richards. Ended up getting the entire credits, some publishing for that album, because it came from a Christmas album that I think Andrew Logue Oldham put together back in the 60s, and there was like, I think it was a Christmas version of As Tears Go By. Do, 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 do,
Yeah, of course. I know. I
do.
love that song.
And
Yeah.
it is, if you look at it, it's kind of a direct left. But I remember at the time Jazz going, yeah, it was a pretty fair outcome. 50% Jagger, 50% Richards. And that ruined the Verve, That I
Oh,
mean,
that's what, it's funny.
what a great song. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
They never made a penny out of it, so it
Wow.
kind of killed them. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't
Yeah,
think
but
it would have killed Mick or Keith to kind of go, it's okay, have this
oh,
one.
yeah, I don't think so.
No.
Um, what were the was there early challenges in the band as far as like just getting things up and going?
Well, our inability to play a musical instrument for some reason never really stopped us. You you know,
That might be the best quote I ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be one of Richard's, but I'll claim it for now.
Yeah, man.
Uh, yeah, I mean, we had no fear. It wasn't really like, oh, I don't know what chord that is. It was like, I just play something, Yeah, it's wrong. All right, play something else. Well, that's wrong too. Oh no, but that's good. And it would be, happy mistakes,
Yeah.
you know. Really, I mean, the driving force behind the band really was its youth,
Yeah.
at the time, and it's we weren't scared to make mistakes. We weren't
That's
scared
great.
to try things. We did things like smash bottles in the studio. We try for sound effects. We dropped a crate of bottles. Richard had an idea for making like a snare drum out of a crate of soda bottles, and dropping it. And, that kind of thing. It was kind of pretty inventive when you think about it.
Yeah.
It
Very
happened.
cool.
But, Oh, and in between that, we got to work with Martin Hannett, right around, the talk period when Steve wasn't around. We got to cut some tracks with Martin Hannett, which ended up being on the actually, they ended up being on the domestic issue of the first album, which was, I think it was Susan Strange, and Soap Commercial.
Okay.
Those two songs replaced Black's Chaos Radio, and they were produced by Martin Hannett and his trusty assistant, Lawrence Diana.
Man, your memory is like, have you always had this kind of memory?
Well, for
I mean,
some things, yeah, for some
yeah,
things,
it's
yeah.
pretty.
I was there, I mean, there'll be people who come up to me and go, "Do you remember that?" I'm like, "No," but
Yeah,
at
but
this
you're
certain
micro.
thing,
You got
yeah.
you have things dialed to micro levels, and that's
Oh,
pretty
for sure.
impressive.
But when it came to actually being in the studio, who wrote what, how it was done, I pretty much have a very solid memory
Yeah,
of just about everything.
that's pretty impressive, man. Uh so what challenge once the first split that they were part of your life, you were part of their life for a long time. Once the first split, what challenges did you have as far as figuring out, holy shit, it's almost like getting a divorce.
Well, yeah.
You know, you're
I mean,
married 30 years and then like, holy fuck, what do I
well, we'd
what's
been at that point. I mean, our last album, our last studio album, prior to the newer one that just came out earlier on this year, uh, came out in 1991 to not great reviews. It was we somehow, I think what we had done was we had so many lineup changes, and the sound became very homogenized and somewhat directionless. Um, there were shining moments on all the albums, but generally speaking, I think what had happened was, well, Nirvana. That's
yeah,
what happened.
yeah,
Pearl Jam, the
yeah,
Chili Peppers, and we were considered. We'd had our 10 years. We'd pushed it to 12, and now the radio was all about indie music. Jane's Addiction. I remember being an early champion of them and
yeah,
hearing their demos and going, "Oh my God, this sounds like a cross between the Sex Pistols and Led Zeppelin." You
yeah,
know, It was pretty right. I mean, they
yeah,
ended up opening up for us at one point in Orange County in '86, something like that, and they were just phenomenal. So you could tell that they weren't scared. We were
yeah.
already like, oh, we've got our ego ramps, and we've got our we've got our lights, and we've got our trucks, and we've got our deli. Everything was like, nicey, nicey, nicey. And then along comes like this, snotty,
The,
angry
the
surfer
younger version of
guy,
yourself.
where the singer's playing with a delay machine as he's singing into it, and it's feeding back, and he doesn't give a shit. And that was the new thing.
Yeah,
So the challenges that faced us was basically, unemployment.
yeah,
Uh, there really was nothing to do. There was no contract left. There was no record to make. There was no touring because Richard had wanted to take time off to make a solo album. That took him 8 years until I finally got a phone call in late '99, early 2000. Like, well, I said, "What's up?" He goes, "Well, my second album flopped. Do you want to get the first back together and maybe make a new record?" I'm like, "Sure." So off we went again. But again, it was different. It wasn't the furs anymore. It was even less of the furs than it ever was before. Um,
in what way?
it, well, it was basically Love Spit Furs. It was Love Spit Love, Richard's band, um, Frank Ferrer, the drummer, fantastic guy,
Yeah.
fantastic drummer, and
Richard
Richard
Fortus.
Fortis,
Yeah. I had him on the
fantastic
show.
guitar player. I
Lovely
mean,
guy. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
they were, you know, they were like uh, a year or so away from joining
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses full time. It was a rock band. It was fun. We did some great touring with Echo and the Bunnymen, and but it wasn't uh, artistically. Richard and I were not gelling. We
Yeah.
wrote some songs. I mean, I wrote a bunch of songs. I had Tim stay with me in this room, sleep on that couch for 6 weeks at a time. We would write and we would send Richard stuff, and he wouldn't. I don't know if he listened to it or didn't like it or whatever. It just didn't work. But when I first got back together with those guys, you know, Richard said, "Do you have any ideas?" And I had an idea I've been knocking around, which turned into a song called "Wrong Train," which
Mhm.
is now on the new album. So it's a 20-year-old song on the new album. So go figure. I don't know. Uh, you know, it's got some good reviews. I can't go there, but
Right.
you know, good luck to them. You know, it's bad timing, I would say.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
they had been touring fairly regularly for a while, and you know, since I hadn't been playing with them since 2007, I was a little upset, you know, that you know there was all this gap of time going while I was in the band where we weren't doing anything, and then all of a sudden they're doing like, you know, 2-3 tours a year,
Right.
and you know, I've said some things to Richard over the years, you know, it's perhaps I should have been more mindful or restrained, but you know, just felt what I felt, you know,
Yeah.
and so we currently don't really speak at the moment.
Right.
Tim never. I would call him on a regular basis. He would never call me back. So you know, as far as I'm concerned, that you know, it's finally
It's over.
it's over.
Yeah.
And in that time, around '94, after like trying to figure out what to do for a year or so, I started working on the Satellite Paradiso album. Originally, it was going to be songs for the Furs. Um, and I started that out on tape on a Fostex B16 in this cabin I was living in at the time, out in Bearsville. I had a nice big room, and you know, it was a great place to record. So I had BP Herding, who was a friend of mine, who used to be playing X-Ray Specs, and he'd played in Classics Nouveau, and we were neighbors, and we'd hang out. And he came along and played on a track or two, and then Paul Garisto, the old one of the first drummers, he was up with them up until just recently. He made the new album. He played on a couple of tracks. Um, but the first person to sign up for it was Sarah Lee.
Right.
She came around. She was also a friend, and you know, and then Gail, and just I would just basically ask people, you know, like, you know, would you play on this album?
Well,
So I ended up with a whole bunch of interesting folks on this what I call a musical collective.
well, I'll tell you what, the combination of, I mean, it's a great record, but your guitar and your singer, holy shit, man.
Oh,
You
thank you.
guys are like,
Yeah, Fred's awesome.
yeah, I mean, just what a perfect unity. It was just so great to hear that music, man.
Thank you.
It
Thank
was
you.
really
Yeah.
powerful. It was really powerful. And then, like I said, to see the stuff on at the Iridium, I was like, well, holy crap.
Yeah, you know, I would really love to do another album, and hopefully this year I'll bring that, you know, I'll bring that more to the front. I've got we recorded some live stuff, live tracks, which Frank Coleman, our drummer, had been itching to mix. So he actually brought his computer along and recorded the shows. So they were, I think, our first show ever um, at BSP in Kingston, and then another night there where we opened for the Furs, which was the most bizarre
That's
experience.
weird.
Yeah, it was the most
Holy,
bizarre
what was
experience.
that like?
very strange, very strange. It was very strange to watch my old band going through. It was almost like a dream because it didn't
Yeah.
look like my old band. Kind of sounded like my old band, but it didn't really. It was very, very different. It was super ultra polished, very dancey moves, very choreographed, very not the Furs. It was,
Right.
I mean, it's like this is the Furs, like, one light and you know,
Yeah.
rainbow and like and anger, and it was a little too much of that, and just it was. I don't know. I just felt like the whole thing was had become like a parody of itself.
Sure.
Like they became a cover band of themselves. Uh,
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. I understand
you
exactly what
know,
you're saying with that line.
and it caused me a lot of pain and anguish over the years
Yeah.
uh, because I didn't think it was fair, didn't think it was right. I didn't like what I was hearing. I could not believe how like there was this new audience of like 50 somethings with a disposable income who didn't even know who I was, didn't know
Right.
who Roger was, didn't know who Duncan was. It was all about Richard, which is fine. It's okay. I can live with that. But it was like, nah.
This
The real people had left, many years ago.
yeah.
The real
Was funny
family.
because I remember as a kid, just like hanging out, walking through the village, and Furs would play in every record store you go into, man.
And
That was like, yeah, like, in the East Village, especially where it was a little more, punk slash alt as
for
opposed
sure.
to the West Village,
Yeah.
And it was all the time, you walk into Tower Records, you hear
Right.
the Furs playing,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
pretty, that's what was happening, man.
Yeah. I mean, there was a period, I would say between 82 and 86, where we were really, we'd done the struggling thing,
Yeah.
and we were now, touring, playing big places, big colleges. College radio was still a big
Right.
thing, it was a big promoter of shows. And it was a great time. You know, we had bands like Talk open for us, do a tour with us. It was fantastic. Loved it. We played with Depeche Mode on one
Wow.
show. It's just all
That's
this. It's great times.
yeah.
We did some shows with you too.
Did you
Uh,
how did you handle all the, like, you're a guy, and we'll talk about this in a minute. You're a blue collar guy, which is different meaning, I know, over there in
yeah,
England, but you're like a middle class working stiff, basically, from that or lower middle
right,
class from
yeah.
that ilk. And all of a sudden, like, you have all this success. How did you handle that? Because that's not an easy thing to do. It's fairly
Uh,
overwhelming.
well, I drank too much, did too much of everything. Really,
Yeah.
did a lot of the BS. Started to have a little bit of perhaps a little bit of an entitlement issue.
Right.
Uh, I remember at one point going, "Oh God, do I have to go to America again?"
Wow.
It's like, do I have to
Holy.
fly?
Why
Do I
can't
have
they
to do
come to me?
nothing? You know, do I have to just put on a guitar? Um,
Wow, that's so
yeah, I
wild.
mean, you become jaded just
Yeah.
because there are certain things that came about throughout that time where we weren't making money. We were making money, but we weren't making real money. We weren't getting the. We would always just, we had a hit with "Love My Way."
Right.
We had a hit with "Heaven." We had a hit with "Ghost in You." We had, a hit with "Heartbreak Beat." We had a huge hit
Pretty
with "Pretty in Pink."
yeah.
Um, but the money wasn't really rolling in, and we were always putting our money back into our shows. We'd signed a kind of a deal where we were always one album behind, so we were always having to take advances against the next thing. So we were always in the hole to the record company. Um,
Downside of having 5 people get credit. That's
yeah,
yeah.
well, but it would have been much better to have 5 or 6 people have the credit and to actually stay together as a band. I do believe if we had stayed together as a band, we probably would have been much more successful, because I think we had an amazing formula. I think we were young, kind of stupid, irresponsible, didn't know how to really negotiate with each other, didn't have a strong management. Tracy had left. She was replaced by another friend, Les Mills, who was a good guy, but he was not a good manager.
Right.
Or rather, he was a good manager, but he was incapable of controlling Richard. Richard
Right.
started to call the shots, and he took longer and longer in between doing things that put us further and further and further and further behind.
Gotcha.
He became unsure of himself as far as the material when everything kind of got watered down. You know, I think that Midnight to Midnight would have been a much stronger album if we'd have gone with the demos. You
Interesting.
know, we spent a lot of time recording, and we did, although we did believe in what we were doing. I just don't think we had the guidance to really pull it off properly. Our A&R changed. Howard Thompson had left. He was the real champion for us in the early days. He left and went to another company, and had great success with other acts. But we were kind of left without any kind of direction, with this big sort of, this behemoth of a ship just
Yeah.
in the doldrums, and so when you put you're putting everybody on a retainer, and you don't do anything for 6 months.
It's a problem.
Yeah, that's a house,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a house for somebody.
Sure. Totally.
We flew stuff that we should never have flown, like entire stage setups, commercially flying an entire lighting rig that just ended, the end of the tour just got dumped in a parking lot in New Jersey.
Holy shit.
I mean, we wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars
So it's
through.
just a lack of, there wasn't anybody there at the helm saying this is how to run a more efficient ship.
No, yes, exactly. There was idealism and there were great ideas, but as far as having a business plan, we did not have
Yeah.
one. And that's where like someone like Paul McGuinness, U2's manager,
Yeah.
he made them millionaires,
Yeah.
by their third album. And we were actually doing better than they were at one point.
Well, I think also probably living in Ireland, where if I'm not mistaken, there's no tax on income generated from intellectual property.
That is true, but because we were non-domicile, part of us, we spent part of the time in England, part of the time in America. We kind of got through tax laws
Okay.
that way. Not, I mean, it was just like we were paying tax. Every paycheck I would get would be 33% would be lopped straight off it, and
Yeah.
then I could claim some of it back at some point.
Sure.
Not all of it, but there was definitely withholding tax on everything. It was just it's an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
We didn't really have a solid business management behind us, and I believe our tour manager at the time was like, "You guys are nuts,"
Yeah. It's
And
such a
I
shame.
don't care. We're gonna do another tour. Everything will be great.
Yeah.
We didn't.
It's unfortunate because the record companies, their model is so self-centered. It's like, hey, I guess you'd think they would help a lot. Like, hey, we want to make sure you guys get paid, but that's not how they work. They, like they would have said, hey, here's some resources or something, but they never did that at all. It was just, hey, here's
Well,
our deal. Fuck all, whatever you guys want to do. It's up to you.
well, yeah. I mean, also, we weren't making enough money for them. Frank Sinatra and Michael Jackson were making all the money
Yeah.
for them, so they didn't really care. We were just like some kind of like, hey, I'll just give these guys some money. Whatever. I'll figure it out. Let the lawyers figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had,
Wow.
tour accountants who, big company, and everything costs money. You're paying
Yeah.
for everything, and it slowly but surely imploded.
Yeah.
So at the end of, by the time we split up basically because we couldn't afford to stay together any longer. Richard was
Sure.
fed up. He's like, I have no money. I've been doing this for 12 years. This sucks. And then, you know, it would be like, well, you shouldn't have done this, or you should have done that. Or maybe, you know, instead of like trying to run the show, maybe you should have just shut up, written the songs, and got on with it, you know. But there was, you know, there were like, it became a lot of infighting,
Yeah.
and people blaming each other for the lack of, you know, foresight or perspective, or just plain overindulgence, you
Yeah.
know, all around. I think it just affected everybody
I'm
in
sure.
slightly different ways.
It's interesting because that documentary I was watching, I thought it's this called like Whatever Happened to Pink Floyd or something like that. And it's
Right.
interesting to see because obviously Gilmore and Rick Wright had certain things to say about Roger, and Roger said, "Hey, he's got his own perspective," and I think it's exactly what you just said. Ultimately, all the pressure just bore down on everybody, and there was just nothing was going to gel it together. And you, as young people, you don't have the communication skills
No.
or thought process to say, "Hey, let's have an adult discuss." It's just you don't have, you don't have
Yeah.
that ability
I
yet.
have a major in business degree. I have a business degree, and I think you're doing this wrong. Uh, the problem was that actually we had some very smart people in the band. Roger Morris and Duncan Kilburn were actually very astute individuals. Duncan especially, and he didn't really like what was going on right from the word go. He thought it was all a bunch of shit. Thought that Les was making a mess of everything. Thought the record companies were like ripping us off, which they kind of were. With the contracts that we had signed were wrong. He was very angry, and he took Richard to task over it. But unfortunately, it always happened, you know, over beers.
Yeah.
And at the end of a tour, and then Richard just called me up one day after we'd come off a pretty. It was the last tour we did, a European tour uh, for, around the talk period, and he said, "I can't take Duncan anymore, you know, and I don't think Roger's helping, and you're either with me or you're not."
You're either on my side or you're not.
Yeah, so what am I gonna say? Well,
Sounds like the recent election.
yeah, and well, I guess I could use some more, thinking I'm gonna be like the Edge, um, which
Hey
I
man,
did
let me
a
tell you,
lot at
that's
some
a
point.
fair comparison, man. You're a hell of a, I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. You're a hell of a guitar player, man.
Well,
And you
thank you.
create your sound is not very similar to the Edge. Your sound is your sound, man.
Thank
And
you.
you did some pretty cool, pretty unique, and still do some extremely cool and unique things that I don't see or hear a lot of other people or any other people doing.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it is what
My
it
only
is.
regret is that we failed to pull off that big one. We were
Yeah,
just on the cusp. We were on the cusp of arenas. We were playing big places, and it just imploded.
yeah,
And I don't know.
yeah. Hey, let's switch gears for a minute. What was you grew up in London? You were originally from London. What was your childhood like?
Pretty messed up. My parents were not they moved around a lot. My father was not a happy man. Uh, for the most part, he suffered a lot from depression, and it was tough times. It wasn't. I went to a lot of different schools. I went to one, two, three, four, five different schools by the time I'd finished school.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and I left with less qualifications than I should have, just because I was just fed up with it.
Sure.
Like repeating stuff, and then just in the end, I was just like, yeah. So I went to work for a printing company, doing graphic arts. So I went to college for a couple of years.
Mm.
And then I guess one of my biggest life-changing things happened when I was 19. So to me leaving to go to London, I was hit by a drunk driver. And
Holy shit.
yeah, I was driving in my car home from a show it was like a local band that we used to go and see every year, every weekend at that time. It was the summer of 1976. the hottest summer on record. And I got hit by a drunk driver who ended up consequently dying. But he hit my car, which was kind of like a Dodge Dart kind of type thing. It was a Ford Cortina. And it flipped me over. I busted both my legs, fractured skull. Uh,
Holy fuck.
my girlfriend, who was sitting in the front, she escaped relatively. She had a few stitches in her knee. She's banged up a little bit, but she was okay. And my friend Dave Martin, who I said I used to go and
Yeah.
hang out with all the time, he got thrown out of the car, and they found him in a field holding that much of his ear was left hanging down. So
So,
a few days later, he came to visit me in hospital. He had a turban on. He was fine after that. But, yeah, that was like a life-changing event for me. I was just like, no, I have to go to. And while I was in hospital, I'm watching So It Goes, which is a
what is
program
it?
that was a news magazine program put on by Tony Wilson,
Mm,
who Factory Records. He
okay.
wasn't Factory Records at the time, but he had the show, which was like it was like a alternative music program, and the Sex Pistols came on, and that was it. That changed my life. I
Because
was
you
like,
realize
I'll
life
never
is
quit.
short, life is precious, and I need to do something that
Yeah,
makes
I
me
don't want to
happy.
work. I don't want to work like this anymore. I don't want to be here. I want to do that.
That's a
That's
p-
what I do.
that's a pretty big realization at 19, especially coming from the family you came from. Because I had a shitty childhood, and you're when you have a messed up childhood, you're programmed to survive.
Yeah.
Self reward is not something, you know what I'm saying?
No, no.
Making yourself happy is not really in your part of your lexicon to a
Right.
great extent. So that's a pretty big.
Well, music had always been a part of my life. So I was a huge, by the time I was 13, 14, I was into T-Rex, David Bowie, some Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple,
Right.
um, and some of the pop stuff like, Roxy Music,
Right.
Alice Cooper. Those are bands that I really, really loved as a 13, 14, 15-year old. And then that kind of all died out. I mean, obviously Bowie kept going, still kept out putting out more cool albums, but Alice was kind of done. T-Rex were kind of done. um and then music changed. It became this, like, it was either like horrible pop on the radio, or it was pub rock, which uh was the kind of like a post R&B precursor to punk,
Yes.
wave, whatever you want to call it, um, and soul music. And I
Yeah.
kind of got into like soul music a lot. I got
Which is
into
great.
soul. I discovered, or rather rediscovered, bands like the Supremes, obviously, OJ's. I kind of got into that. A bunch of people that are friends that were listening to a lot of black R&B music, mostly from the 60s and
Right.
70s. Um, and then the punk thing happened, and that was it. It was reggae and punk, and that was pretty much it for me.
So you saw this show, So It Goes, saw the Sex Pistols on there, and you said, "That's my calling," pretty
Yeah, I
much.
just said
Yeah.
I want to do that.
That's so cool. That's such a great
That was,
story,
to
man.
me, that was such a, like, I'd been watching I've been watching the old grey whistle test. Yeah, there would be a week of Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen's going to save rock and roll. Everybody was going to save rock and roll because apparently rock and roll was dead. 1975. Rock and roll was dead, and Bruce
Right.
Springsteen was gonna save it. I didn't agree. I thought New York Dolls had more chance of saving rock and roll.
Then Bruce Springsteen.
But hey, can't knock the man. I mean, there are
No.
times I go, "Who is that?" And I'll either ask somebody, or spot, whatever it is, Shazam it and go, "Oh my God, it's Bruce Springsteen." And
Yeah.
Richard was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan and a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I hated them both, you know, at the time.
Well,
Uh,
I get it. I've never, I have found Bob Dylan later in life because I just started listening to the words more.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I've just never Springsteen, a great performer, just not my thing. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I kind of went more the other way, I guess. I don't know. But
Did you ever play the Cali in Dunstable? Odd question. So I know.
it's possible. It's
my
possible.
wife, my wife used to see shows there. That's why I asked, because I had someone tell me, oh, we used to play the Cali. So I asked Ann if she knew it, and she said, yeah, I
Was
used to
it
go.
Caledonian?
No, it was the California. It was called the California Club in Dunstable. Dunstable's like not.
That does sound familiar. It does sound familiar because there were a lot of clubs, a lot of music
Yeah.
clubs, in England. Again, sort of a
Right.
rollover from pubs. Pubs just put music on, and that's how they sold beer. So
Right.
you
Right.
know,
It's, Dunstable is not the mecca of
right, right,
anything, but I know that it's like that little club got a lot of action. Like the Sex Pistols, one of their 23 gigs was there,
right.
oddly enough. So,
And prior to that, I mean, the thing that really, apart from like, Bowie, T-Rex and all that, I went to see in 1972, I went to see Free there,
oh,
you know. Um,
great.
uh, yeah,
I mean, I got nothing to say, man. I
it
just,
was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in my life.
yeah,
I mean, I knew the songs because my friends had turned me on to Free Live and Tons of Sobs, and so I knew all the songs. I mean, obviously, I knew all right now because it was a
it-
hit at the time. But
yeah,
the Stealer and uh, I forget them right now. But there's a couple of other songs that were just like, oh,
yeah,
Mr. Big,
yeah.
Mr. Big,
Mr. Kossoff was just,
you know.
I mean, just amazing.
And I unfortunately Andy Fraser had left at that point, and they had a bass player Tetsu, a Japanese bass
Mhm.
player playing
Yeah,
with them,
yeah,
uh, who was great. But Andy Fraser became like I had always like listened to his bass playing and just thought the world of him. It was an amazingly fluid, melodic player that just I could never really understand how like a four-piece or a three-piece could create that amount of sonic power
yeah,
with so much space in between. And I kind of go totally against that because I'm always like filling in the holes with little things.
yeah.
But just listening to Paul Kossoff's tone, I just
Beautiful, man.
yeah. But that's like a Les Paul, yeah, 59 Les Paul and a
Les Paul
Marshall
through a
amp,
Marshall.
everything's turned all the way up. That's the sound.
Yeah. There's actually a good documentary on Prime, a Bad Company documentary, but of course they talk a lot about Free. It was really good, really interesting, how the band came together, and just it was cool. I love that band.
Yeah, yeah, they were great. So they were a big pivotal point in my musical education. But I was also into Black Sabbath. Early, first couple of three albums were like,
Incredible records, man.
yeah, and
Incredible
and and
records.
to and they're still so a lot of it's so relevant today.
Yeah, very much.
And the thing with Alice Cooper was I realized that how he mixed rock with vaudeville. You
Yeah,
know, it's just like but he was very theatrical, and like Bowie,
yeah,
relied very heavily on the stage presence,
totally.
and the lighting and the show, quote unquote, which I was a big believer in, and we in the Furs we had always great light shows, and the band had good stage presence, so it was a show. We
Yeah,
rocked. We really kicked ass. Just about every show. I think the only time that maybe we might have like just kind of almost felt like we were giving in was towards the end. You know, when there were people in the band that all good players, nice people, but just it wasn't. It wasn't. We weren't capturing what we had set out to do.
yeah,
It wasn't working, and I understand why Richard wanted to try something else.
sure.
Um, you know,
Um, if you had to go back and give yourself advice, assuming your younger self would have listened?
Yeah,
Young John Ashton would have. What would you have told yourself that would have made your life easier?
uh, um, I think I would have paid more attention and tried to understand the business aspect of it all and pushed for some kind of business management, because I do believe that that was really the ruin of the band,
Sure.
and it caused so many other problems. I mean, yeah, there were excesses, you know, we all drank too much and did too much of one thing or another, but um, we
Money has a way
lacked,
of solving all those problems.
we lacked a discipline there, and also because we lacked a certain work ethic. We should have worked harder. You know, I would have practiced more. I would have tried to find other projects to get involved in.
Sure.
But after being on the road for 6 months, the last thing you want to do when you get home is pick up a guitar. You
Yeah.
know, you have to wait a few months and kind of go, "Oh, hello, old friend.
Sure.
Let's see what we can do, now." And then you kind of like go, "Oh, what am I gonna do now?" So the distance between us, uh, it was physical, because Richard and Tim were in America and I was still in England. And so I couldn't just pop around and go, "Hey, let's have a cup of tea and, a bit of a jam," or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so, that was that was part of the problem too.
Tell me the two or three best concerts you've seen.
Well, definitely Free, in 1972, which for me was my first real concert, and changed my life in that way. Um, one of my favorite shows was David Bowie, in the Station to Station period when he played at Earl's Court, and I mean, I kind of some of those albums sort of passed me by, um, at one point or another, and then I've kind of gone back and rediscovered them, and definitely
There's
Station
so
to Station.
many. Is
Yeah,
unless you were like like crazy Bowie fan. I mean, he so many, and he went through so many phases, man.
sure,
Yeah, it's hard
sure.
to keep up with that.
Yeah, I mean, the Berlin albums were good in their own way, in their own right. But I really think that I really like uh, Diamond Dogs a lot.
Great
That to
record,
me,
man. Yeah, that was
obviously I
very
miss
punk.
Ronson. Yeah, I
It was
miss
a
Mick Ronson's playing. I mean, I
yeah.
think his tone is um, just unbelievable, and so those earlier Bowie albums, like Aladdin Sane, which kind of really showcased Ronno's playing to the
Yeah.
max. Um, I miss those. Um, the earlier albums, I was like, okay, yeah, I listened to them, but I always go back to that starting point is Aladdin Sane. The ones in between, before that, with Life on Mars, Man Who Sold the World, they're all great albums, and I love to listen to them in the right time.
Hmm.
But I feel that to me, Diamond Dogs is the perfect rock opera. I would love to see that on Broadway. I
Yeah.
think someone's gonna steal this idea,
I
put it
think I'd like
together.
to see anything on Broadway right now.
Yeah, and that album, I think, is just so
Yeah.
perfect for that. Um, and I really have been listening a lot to Station to Station. Then, I guess some of the other shows that I think were like really important to me were The Clash. I saw them at Victoria Park when they played the big Rock Against Racism show. I saw The Clash probably a dozen times over the years,
Wow.
over a very short period of time. But
Yeah,
they
they
were,
weren't. Yeah.
but they played the Music Machine, which I used to go to just about every night. So I saw them.
So you saw them in a proper little clubs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
When I,
pretty cool.
2,000-3,000, seater. I recently, when I say recently, back into I want to say late '90s, early 2000s. Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros were playing in New York City, and I happened to wander, but I didn't even know they were playing. I happened to wander by, and I saw, Joe Strummer, Mescaleros, and it was at Irving Plaza,
Sure. Yeah.
and I just something told me. I went up to the ticket booth and I said, "Look, you don't know me, but I used to know Joe quite a bit, and I know it's sold out. I used to play in this band, blah blah blah." And she goes, "You look familiar. Have a good."
That's cool.
And I went in and I went backstage and I went and hung out and I said, "Hey, And he goes, "What are you up to?" I said, "Well, I think we're gonna get the Furs back together again." "I think that's a brilliant idea."
I saw the Clash one time. What a hell of a show. There's like 82 or 83 or something like that.
Yeah,
Great,
yeah, great band.
explosive energy. I mean, really good show.
I saw them in the 1977 period, and then I saw them with the album after that, Give Them Enough Rope, and when they're all wearing funny suits. But I loved them always. I just thought they were fantastic. Um, and I'm just trying to think. I guess I really liked the David Bowie show at Madison Square Garden where Gail was singing with him. Thought
Yeah.
that was a fantastic show, just because he was great. He was in great form, and she got a standing ovation for
Her voice.
Oh, it's incredible.
She's got this amazing, incredibly beautiful voice, man. It's
Yeah, she
something
does.
else.
She does. She's truly gifted.
Yeah.
She is such a sweet human being.
Yeah, totally.
I hope she puts out an album soon.
I told her the same thing.
It's that time.
I want to ask you a question about Satellite Paradiso. The closing track, Touch the Sky. I listened to it about seriously 7 or 8 times. It's like it ends with like 5 minutes of guitar porn. It's just amazing. I was curious, what guitar were you playing on that? And if you remember, what effects were you using? Because it was just boom, there it goes. I wanted you to pull that out. Yeah, man. Tell me about. All right, so tell people about that, because it looks like a 335 child of a 335 and a Strat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what it was it was Les Paul's last design concept in 1973. I believe the first models came out, and I believe it's the last guitar that he was actively involved in designing for Gibson. I believe he wanted single coils or low noise pickups, or low output rather pickups. And I don't quite know what these are. I think they're like a P90.
I think so, like a P90.
You know?
This is a Les Paul signature guitar.
Yeah.
John's talking about. Yeah.
And then you can't really see it, but it's got like right here, it's got a phase switch in and out.
Right.
And then it's got filters. 3 different filters here, which is like a tone control but notched. So it goes from 50 to 200 to 500 hertz, I guess.
So this is a gold top, and it looks like looks like 2 P90s with sort of plastic covers. Now that says Gibson on the cover of the pickup. And it's got 2 volume controls, and it's got this the tone control you said, and the
right. It's got these notch filters.
What is that? What do the filters do?
They it's like a tone step. It's like I don't know if you can hear it. I'll see if I can get a sound out of it.
Oh yeah, man. Oh my God, that sounds so good.
For a second, but I'm gonna turn the amp up just a little bit.
Yeah, man. Do your thing. Take your time. What are you playing through?
Like a little Vox VC TV VC4.
Okay.
It's like it goes down to a 1/4 watt. So in the middle pickup position, out of phase is then in phase. And then these filters, the volume, I have to get this fixed. The volume pot only works on like the last quarter. It just dies completely.
That's weird.
Yeah, I think it's knackered.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
replaced, but you can see, you can tell a slight.
Yeah.
Perhaps a little bit more pronounced on the treble pickup.
So how does that sound different from a 335?
Yeah, it's kind of, and it's also got like two outputs.
Right.
It's this output here is the full output.
Right.
And this seems to like cut it in half.
That's like a mono. It's not mono and stereo, but it's just different outputs, right?
Yeah, it was designed. I'll put it down for a sec.
It's a beautiful guitar. It's all, and they only made those in gold top and yellow. There's a sunburst, and then there's a natural too, isn't there?
I think I think I've only ever seen the sunburst and the gold top.
And the gold. And you know, it's weird. I read that the sunburst, they said they didn't make a lot of them, so it's worth more. I think the gold, I'll take the gold top any day over the sunburst, me personally.
Yeah,
you know,
it's, and I'm not really playing it to its full extent, like properly. My setup is just all over the place at the moment. But I did use for that guitar solo. I had just bought an amp by a maker called Fargen.
Spell that.
Amplifiers.
Fargen.
Fargen. They make kind of like a Marshall clone, but it's small, and it has like it has that sort of volume, the attenuation,
Okay.
voltage attenuation.
Sure.
So you can get really soaked, saggy sounding tubes at a very low volume. You just dial it to where you want it to go. And it also has a decade switch, so it goes from it goes from 60s Marshall. So like you crank everything up, sounds like a 60s Marshall. Then it goes to the 70s Marshall, which is a little bit more blues breakery, kind of a little bit more gritty.
So you get like Yardbirds and Jimmy Page, and then
yeah, and then it's got like the 80s switch, which kind of turns it into like was it the JCM 800 kind of, you know, more hot rodded sort of sound.
I got that sitting right here.
That's actually my favorite Marshall amp, JCM 800.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I love it. JCM 800 combo there. It's a 50-watt combo. Yeah, I absolutely love that amp.
I want to see if I can tilt this because it's all connected into. You can't really see it.
Nope. Now you can. I think it's. There you go.
My
Strat's in front of it.
Right. I'll take pictures. Fargen make like.
Where are they out of? I never heard of them.
I believe out of California. They've done a lot of. They're like a little bit like Friedman. They've done a lot of like you know, mods for different people. Different musicians, but he's got his own set of high gain amps, and I particularly like this one because I thought, this is kind of what I want, you know, like it's a miniplex. It's a miniplex too, you know. So I listened to it online a few times, and then I bought one, and I was really happy with it. So the first time I tried it out, I was basically finishing up. We were actually mixing "Touch the Sky."
Okay.
And I said, you know, this really needs a guitar solo at the end, you know, sort of thing. And so I did my best Paul Kossoff imitation that I could. I cranked it up, and I did a bunch of takes, and I sent them off and I took them over to Anthony, and we chopped them up, and that was it.
That's like a
don't
5-minute solo, man. That's pretty.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
easy to do at all. That sounds fucking brilliant. It's awesome, man. I
Thank you.
love that.
Thank
I
you.
mean,
Well, you know,
that's.
I worked on it for a few hours, but I mean, you know,
I'm sure you
the
did.
basic
It's
idea of it came, you know, pretty quickly. And then there's a slide that goes over the top, which kind of gives it that sort of like dive bomb kind of sound at the end. But my sound pretty much is really, it's either like going straight into an amplifier like that, or I was using bedrock amps for a while as well, which still have a couple of. The 50 watts are great. And Jay, a band from Bedrock, gave me a bunch of amplifiers back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I kept most of them.
right.
They're all, you know, I've got an 18 watt and a couple of 50 watts, and I love them. So
What
they were the original sound that I would use. I use speaker simulators made by Palmer, which are also 80s units, and they work really well. So that's how I got round there, not having to mic stuff up and being able to, you know, play at a reasonable volume, because I just, you know, used to use the speaker simulators and just go straight out of that, and you know, so I use that a lot. So I have a Laney AC30, like
they're
a
out of the UK.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got an AC, so I've got the Fargent and the Laney together, but I've got them left and right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do an SM57 on the Fargent and a little Groove Tubes ribbon mic on the Laney. And the Laney's much brighter sounding. It's kind of closer chiminess wise to a Vox AC30.
Okay.
And so I just blend those two really. And then more recently, I've just been playing through um, this Vox ACTV4.
What is
Um,
that now?
that's the amp you just heard then. It's like a
Okay.
little Vox amplifier, a little you know, tube amp, and it goes from uh, 2 watts to 1 watt to a quarter watt.
That's
You know,
amazing, man. You get such
so
a
the
great sound
technology
out of these little amps, man.
yeah, the technology now is great because they, instead of master volumes, you don't have to use it. You just use a drop in voltage,
Yeah.
and it does the same thing. And without introducing another circuit, so they sound purer, you know, less fuzzy in a way. Where
What?
the real sound
How
comes
many
through.
wattage is that Fargent
The
that you have?
Fargent, I believe, is 12 watts.
What model is that? If there
It's
is a,
the Miniplex
the
2.
Miniplex too. Okay, I'm gonna check that out online.
Yeah, I think I want to say his name is Bill Fargent.
I'm gonna check that out for sure. Did you have any? You had maybe some echo or delay.
Sure, I probably used, you know, I might have, for that, I think I might have used some stock stuff that I had in Pro Tools, like just whatever delays that I was, you know. I mean, I use Slate plugins and Universal Audio plugins.
Sure.
So I probably used those. Uh, my, I'm just gonna unplug this from here. Plug this back in here. Oops, just turn this down. Maybe off. And apologize, covered in dust. But this, the Strymon Volante is a fantastic piece of gear. To me, that is everything that I had in the 80s. It's like a space echo, basically, or the Benson Echo Rec, which also, you
Is
know,
that just an echo pedal? I mean, I look at that.
yeah,
I see all those dials. I'm like,
yeah,
it's like getting
yeah.
behind a
No, it's like
cockpit in a plane. That scares the shit
yeah,
out of me.
it's basically, you know, you can dial in mechanics, you know, you can wear tape wear mechanics to
Holy
get that
smokes!
warbly, kind of messed up, you know, crinkly tape kind of sound that, you know,
Sure.
you may or may not want. It also has a Benson Echo Rex style playback, which is kind of like a wire-based echo, not a tape-based. So it's like the early Floyd. It's
And
basically what it is. It's the Benson Echo Rex are very noisy, very temperamental, and you don't want to take them out on the road ever.
And it's called the Strymon Echo.
Yeah, so it's called the Strymon Volante.
Volante, okay.
Yeah, and that's, to me, they have a delay pedal called, oh gosh, what's it called now? It's got like another tape name, but this is the newest one that they have.
Yeah.
I've had it for about a year now, and I love it.
What's your like number 2 and number 3 guitars?
Well, my number 2 and number 3, I always love my Les Paul Gold Top, which is a 83. It's a 30th anniversary reissue, which I bought in Berlin when I was making Midnight to Midnight.
That's got to be kind of cool as you're older, you look back and say, shit, how cool is that I had the opportunity musically and cash wise to go into buy a nice cool 83 Les Top in Berlin. That's really cool.
Yes, well, yeah, I bought a Fender Super Champ there as well from the same store. Fantastic little lamp.
Absolutely.
I have a Gretsch 6119, which is like a 6120, but with single pickups. It's a 50s model. I'm not quite sure of the year. It's quite an early model. And I also have I have a Paul Reed Smith. I played Paul Reed Smiths for a while in the 90s. I met Paul at a NAMM show in '84 when he had like 3 or 4 guitars on a table.
Right.
Wow, that looks really cool. And about a year later, he sent a couple of his people over and said, "This is for you." And they gave me one of the very first Paul Reed Smith guitars in a very interesting finish, like a iridescent snake skin. I have it. It's away in the closet. One day when I get all this cleared up and the dust is gone from the building that I've been getting on, I should bring everything out, dust it off, and send you pictures. Or maybe
I'd love to see it, man. Yeah.
And then I have another Paul Reed Smith, which is it's a McCarty.
Okay, yeah, that's the
stop tell please with the McCarty pickups. Yeah. I love that guitar.
What are those pickups like? Because he was instrumental in the early, if I'm not mistaken, the Gibson pickups, correct?
Yes, yeah, he designed the early patent applied for pickups in the PAFs. They're great. They're really nice, and they're bitey but mellow. They're snotty. They got a little sort of attitude to them. Not the earlier Paul Reed Smiths, they had a sound to them which wasn't a Gibson, wasn't a Fender, but you could get like those combinations between coil tapping and everything else. But the McCarty, because it's a stop tail piece and those pickups, to me that's my favorite model of his. Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Thank you. Wow, that's very cool looking, man. That's a great looking guitar. So clean, so clean, man.
Yeah.
Like perfectly clean lines. You got just a tone volume and a volume, a tone and a volume, and that's it.
It does have a push pull on this, but yeah, it's super, and I think that's what makes it what it is. It's like unfettered by technology.
And it's a PRS McCarty. That's what they're still called. Yeah. So
I'm coming back.
Yeah.
And I have this one. That was built for me by it's become my friend now, but by the name of Pascal Carreau.
It's like it's like a jazz master. Like a
Jaguar.
Jaguar, yeah.
Jaguar, it's got like it's got a humbucker and a P90 here.
Are those his pickups? They look like Lawler sort of.
They kind of, yeah, but they're Krell. They're a French make, and I had him make me a short whammy.
That's a little tiny Bigsby, man. I've never
Yeah,
seen that. That's
the
funny.
Duesenberg,
Yeah, that's cool.
and then the headstalkers like that.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's kind of
Really
nice.
nice. That's clean. Man, I like, oh, look at that. Is that a John Ashton custom?
Yes, it is.
That's awesome, man. So is that available? Like does he,
I think he made like maybe a dozen of them or something like that.
that's
And
really
it
cool.
has, basically what I wanted, which I don't have here, it has
So
a battery in it, so it's got like a boost here.
Okay.
It's got like it's like a 10, 15
Yeah,
dB
yeah.
boost.
Sure.
You know, it really kicks it out. I don't need
That's
any fuzz boxes with that one. And
that's
really,
awesome.
what that is it's a play on my Music Man Saber 2, which I told you about
Yeah.
before, which had this treble boost and phase switch, and it was battery power, had this battery powered thing, and you kick that on, it was like you didn't really need a fuzz box or
Yeah.
a distortion pedal, you know. So, you know, and I play a lot more now. I've learned to play a lot more with my volume,
Right.
you know, so then I can really just clean up.
Rolling off is so, you get so many good tones like that when you have the
Yeah,
right pickups. Yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah,
makes a huge difference, man. You could do a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So talk me off the ledge, man. I need you to, so I love my 335. And so I was looking recently at like an older Epiphone Casino.
Oh,
And
I have one right here.
well, I talked to a friend of mine and he was saying, Craig, you know what? It's a great guitar, but I don't know that you're going to see tremendous difference between that and your 335.
Probably not. Probably not. You know, I have a Casino 12 string.
Okay. Oh my God.
So
That's
it's
hard to play.
yeah, it's I mean it's a fun guitar. It's nice, it sounds good. It looks great. It's up on
Yeah.
the wall there. The other one is that 6119, but that's you know what those are. Yeah, I don't know. If I was to buy another guitar,
Well, hold on one second. The signature is how much of a difference am I going to see in the signature and the 335?
oh, I think you'll see a lot.
Okay.
I just because of the type of pickup it is for a
Okay.
start, and the ability to go in and out of phase, just with a twist of a switch, you know, and then the uh, the notching of the filters.
Right.
Um, but I think it was, and Les Paul being what I think he was trying to do then was to build um, a more, perhaps more of a throwback guitar more to the jazz days where like the mellower tones and not to freak out the sound engineers so much. I think he kind of like fell into that same spot that Fender did when they made the Starcaster.
Right.
It's like a semi-acoustic but electric guitar, and I don't think the Starcaster has quite the tonal uh, characteristics. But the thing that really sold me on this guitar was I used to press my nose up against the window of a music store where this was like in the it was a Starcaster and one of these, and I
Right.
remember it distinctly, you know. And then Richard Fortus, uh,
Oh, he's got
had-
more guitars than almost probably anybody that's been on this show.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry. So he had one of those.
Yeah, he had one of those, and I was like, "Wow, I remember those." It was, yeah, check it out. And he played it a lot, and I thought, you know what? If he really digs it, I think it's got to be a good guitar. So then I started looking, and I found one on. I think I went to Chicago Music, and I found one on there, and then I was going to buy it, and I just didn't have the money.
Well, they're
And
pricey, man. They're like between 4 and 5 grand.
uh,
Maybe if
this
you get one
was
with that's a
three.
little bit off, it's like 3,800 or something.
Yeah, this was three.
Oh, that's
Uh,
a hell of a deal.
Yeah, it was, but it was like, oh, I don't know. It had to have been like close to 15 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So they're gradually going up in price. And I said to a friend of mine, he's just seen this guitar. He goes, "How much is it?" And I said, "It's $3,000." He goes, "It's yours." I mean, he trades stocks and he does relatively well, I guess.
That's
And
pretty cool.
friend and a fan of the band just said, just write some great songs on it.
That's awesome.
They made me
Any friends of the show? Is that fully hollow or semi-hollow?
It's I believe it's fully hollow. I don't think there's a block in the middle.
Well, let me tell you, man.
Maybe, yeah, but you know, there is a little bit of blocking inside, you know, but I see like running between here and here, I see some blocking, but I guess that's really just for this.
Right.
You know, I think it's pretty hollow.
You do a hell of a job controlling that tone, considering the volumes you're playing at.
Yeah, well, you know, and of course you get like the feedback too. So yeah, you know, you kind of have to be aware of that. So it's a little bit of a juggle, you know, but I found live I didn't have any real problems with it at all. But like the Gretsch, that feeds back like really. I have to like I can stand in a certain way and the thing just vibrates. You know?
I cut you off before. I'm sorry. You said you were going to say if I'm going to buy another guitar now.
Oh, well, you know, I mean, I had so many chances to buy great guitars over the years. You know, I've been in shops in Santa Cruz where they were selling 50s Strats for like, you know, $3,000-4,000 back in the 80s. And why didn't I just grab one?
Because it's still $3 or $4 grand back in the 80s, which is like 30 grand now, or like, you know, 15. That's still a lot of,
you know, I wasted a lot of money on stupid stuff. So I think I could have wasted some money on. But yeah, most of my guitars that I purchased were in the hundreds, you know, they were not thousands, even then. And then I had another chance, and I'll get to the point, but I had another chance while I was in a store called Vintage and Rare, where I bought my J45 from, which was actually a swap for a couple of other guitars, which I still have to this day. It stays in tune. It can be on the wall for 6 months, and I'll get it down. It's perfect.
That's cool.
Mick Ralph's.
Oh, yeah.
His guitars, and there was a Les Paul Jr., and I didn't buy it.
Oh man.
Yeah, I didn't. I think they were asking £500 for it.
No.
Didn't buy
it. I looked him up because I wanted to have him on the show, but I saw he had a stroke or something a while back.
He's been pretty poorly.
Yeah.
For a while, I believe. I think he was doing okay for a while, but then I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it was going through a Fender Twin, and the owner was like, "It sounds like it's got a compressor on it, doesn't it?" And it did, and the thing sounded awesome, and I was just idiot.
Yeah, that's a
didn't buy it.
Didn't buy it.
I bought the 6119 instead. You know?
Les Paul Jr. Mick Ralph's Les Paul Jr. That's pretty.
Mick Ralph's Les Paul Jr. And then another time I saw a Les Paul that had belonged to Mark Bolan that he had given to Mick Ronson, and Mick Ronson had producing a band that had two guitar players in it, and both of them were playing the same guitar, and he gave one of these guitars to, it was a band called Dead Fingers Talk, and they were selling that guitar, and that was 10 grand about 20 years ago. It's probably 100,000 now, easy. You know, because it belonged to Mark Bolan and Mick Ronson. So
that's good pedigree, man.
Yeah. But I think, you know, I've become a lot, even with all this, I've become a lot simpler in my approach. And I used to have a really nice telly back in the day. I would really like another telly.
So that's what's next on your agenda. Another
telly. If I have that kind of money, you know, I would probably just try and get like a Fender custom shop. You know, probably a $3,000 guitar by the time you're done with it, or a was the other company that
Nash.
Is it? Yeah, but it's like Wildwood. Wild,
Wildwood. Yeah, yeah.
Wildwood
Well,
makes great ones.
no, well, they just get custom guitars.
Yeah,
Wildwood's just a retailer. But they're such a huge, powerful retailer that they'll get custom one-offs
right,
just
right.
for them. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had a buddy who
Greg
just bought an
Koch.
SG. What's that?
Greg Koch
Yeah,
is playing their star. He's there. What? He's the guy. You
I
know.
had Greg on the show here.
Right.
He's a phenomenal player.
Oh, he's incredible.
Yeah, he practices all the time, man.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why it's not like
yeah,
a secret. I mean, you just, practice, practice, practice.
yeah, yeah.
He's a maestro,
Well,
man.
that's definitely what if I'd had my time again, I would just
That's
spend more
Ellie.
time, doing that instead of like pursuing other things.
If would you are you going to be able to, assuming COVID gets fixed, would you tour with Satellite Paradiso?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, we're none of us are spring chickens, and unfortunately, we'll have like commitments to make, and not being 20 all over again, and
Sure.
being able to sleep in a van.
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of tough. I would like
Yeah.
to, you know, but I'm really kind of interested in a lot of like these more like one-off type shows. I did one. I think I emailed you the link to it right before this show,
Yeah.
and this happened a couple of years ago. My friend Jonathan Donahue, who's the singer and one of the writers in Mercury Rev, he and Grasshopper are basically the band. Sorry. Um, and he he always does it. He texts me and he says, gonna get together with a bunch of friends in a couple of months, and we're gonna just do like an impromptu thing where we're gonna just jam with like in front of a movie screen. And I thought, all right, probably like some little club in Kingston, a few people, it should be fine. Yeah, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. Get a text back. Can you play bass? All right, okay, I'll play bass. He's always putting me out of my comfort zone. Always. Love him. But he's always doing it. So then, like, I don't hear anything. A few weeks go by. He goes, okay, this is the date. It's the Huchika Festival. We're playing live in front of a backdrop of a Carnival of Souls, which is that old black and white movie.
Uh-huh.
He sent me the link for it. Black and white horror movie. And it's you, me, Grasshopper, Robin Hitchcock, Garth Hudson, sister, and I'm like, you're kidding me. I'm like, I'm.
And you got
Oh,
to play bass.
I said I play bass, but he goes, well, it's too late now. I've printed the flyers. Yeah. And I'm like, "Geez." He goes, you mean you don't want to do it? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. He goes, don't worry, it's in E.
That's great, man.
And that was one of the situations that took me out of my comfort zone so incredibly. Like just because, it was Mimi Goace, who was in Hugo Largo. She was going to be the singer and, the acting out the parts, and Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth playing drums, and Anthony Thistlethwaite, and all these names. I'm like, holy shit, and I'm playing a bass. So I had to borrow a bass that would fit the part. So I borrowed my friend down the road, Kenny and Gwen Siegel, who have their own bands, and she has an EB3.
Okay.
Little SG EB3, was it EB3 EBO bass, and that was just perfect because I have a Paul Reed Smith bass, and I was like, not gonna take that because that's
Yeah.
like, it's just not it's a great bass, but I wanted something a little bit more retro.
And how'd the show go? Well,
oh, it's fantastic.
that's cool.
Good.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Give me your top 3 Desert Island discs just for this minute.
Okay, for this minute, well, it would have to be Diamond Dogs.
Uh-huh.
It might be Talk Talk Talk.
Good for you. You know what? That's awesome. I think
I
that's awesome. not many people put, you know, their own stuff there.
And then, oh gosh, what could I say? Right now, I would say anything by Starcrawler.
Yeah, you told me about them.
Yeah,
That girl is so I can't believe how young she is. She's
yeah,
so
yeah,
musically I mean, she's really together, man.
yeah, yeah. It's a great band. You know, I mean, my Desert Island discs always change. You know, it could anything by the Clash. You know,
Right.
I'll take the story of the Clash. That
Yeah.
could, if I had to pick. You know, to be honest with you, if I had to pick one album, it would be like a compilation of like everything the Clash has ever done. That would be my. I'm fine.
That's
I'm
cool.
with that. Because I realized over the years how great those songs are, and what they really meant, and what he was saying, and the way they experimented. You know, was it grew on me over the years. I never kind of was like, you know, everyone, you know, would have their own different, you know, opinions and feelings about different albums. But if you put everything, you know, as a whole together from 1977 to Sandinista to
Yeah.
Combat Rock to, you know, you're just like, wow, what
It's
a body of work, you
yeah, it's a
know?
huge, awesome body of work. Something
Yeah,
to be real proud of.
yeah.
Did you ever come across Marco Peroni?
Marco Peroni, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I had
yeah,
him on the show. What a wild guy.
yeah,
He's a
he's
pretty
great.
awesome guy. He really
Yeah,
is.
a great guitar player and
Very
avid
much.
collector of guitars. Um, I told you he has the Yob guitar by
Yeah, that's
uh,
right. I
Dave
never
Hill from Slade. I haven't seen Marco in a long time. Last time I saw him was on TV. I think he was playing with um, what's that Irish lass? His name always keeps
Sinead
getting.
O'Connor.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. That was the last time I saw him. But I mean, he did great work, you know, over the years.
yeah. Really good work. Wrote some great songs too.
Yeah,
John, tell me the best decision you ever made.
going to that first Psychedelic Furs rehearsal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I didn't really have a lot of choice in the matter, but you know, I mean, I ultimately I could have said no and chickened out. I'm glad I didn't. You know, I went
Well,
out of my comfort zone for that.
well, it sounds like you've done that. When you've done that, it's paid off for you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like you always had like a catalyst. Like your Tracy was the catalyst. Your buddy just called you up a few weeks ago and said, "Hey, do you want to do this show?" Oh,
yeah,
and it's, oh, by the way, do you want to play? You got to play bass.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that's cool that you have that. You know, and that accident. How nutty is that? That hadn't you had that
I,
trauma?
yeah, yeah. And then there was a girlfriend involved, and you know, we broke up, and that was it. I'm gone. You know.
But it's always cool to hear these things because everybody's story is a little different, but there's always some, you know, some stimulus that, you know, if you had made a left turn instead of a right turn, your whole life is different. You know, you're a
Yeah,
cost accountant at a
yeah.
manufacturing plant or something, you
Yeah,
know, it's
sure.
just
Yeah,
wild.
I don't know what I would have been doing, you know, to be honest with you, at the end of the day. I think it would have been something to do with guitars. I was interested in building guitars at one point. And one of my college teachers was like, you know, you should just you should just go and build guitars. You know, it seems like you're more interested in that than in graphic arts. And I was like, yeah, I don't know.
The only problem with that is if you think it's tough to make a living as a musician,
Yeah,
it's just, it's like I've had a couple of luthiers on the show and they're like, don't ever recommend anybody. There's no money in this at all.
yeah,
You know, it's really hard to make a living
yeah.
doing that. Tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
Let me see. I guess I believe that deep down I'm a good person, and I will try anything at least twice.
Right on, man. I like that. What would, I know you've been married a long time and congratulations on that. What would your wife say she likes most about you?
Um, she would say she thinks I have a good heart, but that I'm impetuous. And
You're a musician, man.
yeah, yeah.
Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
I like to fish. You know, I like go fishing, and you know, but I don't really get to do it much. I was an avid trout fisherman for a while, and I certainly live in the right area for it.
Yeah.
I really don't get a chance to go out much. And my wife's from Virginia Beach, so her family were all out, you know, ocean
Right.
going, saltwater fishermen. So I would go out with the odd uncle or
Right.
stepfather and you know, partake of that. I spent a lot of time fishing when I was in England in between albums. There were times when I knew that I should not be sitting on the riverbank, that I should be doing something else, but I'm like, hell, you know, I'm
I,
here now.
I love bass fishing. It's so relaxing, man. I love it
Yeah,
to get out on a lake, a little tiny boat, you know, I've smoked some cigars. It's just
yeah, yeah,
very relaxing, man.
yeah,
Fishing's
yeah.
great. What's your favorite place you've traveled? You've probably been all over the world several times.
Um, well, just recently going back to London was a big eye opener for me because we were able to take my family, uh,
Oh, that's nice.
my
Your
wife,
kids?
Catherine, and my son Oliver, who was 12 at the time, and Tallulah, the daughter, was 9. It was definitely an eye opener for them. We had been taking trips to New York City on a fairly regular basis. We'd go to the Natural History Museum, or most recently, we went with another family a couple of years ago now to go and see Hamilton.
Okay.
And my son's got, like, you know, he's got the headphones on, the hat, and the glasses, and his backpack. And so, yeah, I think I could live in New York. This is, you know, you
And
know,
I
walking
hope to God you make enough money to do
right. And
that.
then we get to London, and he's like, New York sucks. I want to live here.
It's so similar to me though, isn't it? It
Yeah.
seems like it's real similar.
It is in a lot of ways, but it still retains a certain villagey aspect that
London.
London does.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's just a little bit closer and, you know, cramped together. The streets are just a little bit narrower, even though they,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. No, they are.
but there's something about, you know, visiting Soho now, which was like rather seedy back in the day, and you know, I think that's where Marco's family was sort of from around that area.
Yes, they were. They were. And he told me the story, you know, his family was his parents were from Italy,
Yeah,
and he used to get a lot of shit like not racism, but whatever it is, like
bloody
ethnic.
foreigners.
Yeah, about, you know, you immigrant, you know,
Yeah,
when he and I couldn't believe that. I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
that's,
Well,
you
I
know,
had the same thing, you know, my parents are Hungarian, so, you know, I grew up in England, you know, after, you know, the revolution in 57, my parents came over to England and tried to start a new life, and
sure.
it wasn't good. My dad was not a happy camper about it in the end, and there was a lot of you know, bloody foreigners, and you know, I used to get joked a lot, you know, at school.
That's
Uh,
some that's so because the thing that's shocking to me is that's what the one of the main things London and New York have in common. It's like it's
it's a
such a
melting pot.
melting pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
And I
weird.
experienced it recently when I went over there. There's some some guy in a it was like a 7-Eleven type store, you know, and he was like it was actually I think it might have been a Tesco, you know,
Sure.
and he was shouting at, you know, like you know, an Indian or Pakistani
Sure.
uh, 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 clerk, you know, like, "What I fucking want that, do I?" You know? And I just thought, you know, God, this is why I left England. There was a part of England that is very like that and still is, unfortunately. That, that- but it appears there is racism all over the world for different people. Gail told me some horrendous stories about Spain and her experiences there when she was with Bowie and how rude,
Sterling Campbell told me the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
About Spain
yeah.
specifically.
It's weird. Now you think of Spain as being like a peaceful, kind of happy kind of country, you know, but
Cosmopolitan. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, you know, going back to favorite places, Barcelona, just because of the architecture, Madrid because of the architecture, the food, you know. Um, you know, I can give or take. I don't really care about France so much. I mean, Paris is nice, you know,
Mm.
it's definitely nice to wander around. Um, I loved Rome when I was there. Um, I loved Argentina. I loved Buenos Aires. You know, it's an amazing place. And if you got 6 weeks to kill in 1983 or 1982 on a beach at Coogee Bay in Australia, just outside of Sydney, and that was a pretty good spot, you know. I enjoyed that a lot, you know, the fresh oysters and just great food, and we had a great time, you know.
It's nice to hear all these nice places. That's cool that you get to do all that, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love Tokyo. You know, that was, you know, to me that was like it was like Disneyland. You know, before I'd even gone to Disneyland, I just found the culture and everything was just amazing.
Yeah. I've been told that it's a very unique place, Japan in
Yeah,
general. Hey,
yeah.
2 more questions, and thank you for
Yeah.
everything, man. I've enjoyed spending time. Thank you so much, man. This has been really cool. So thank you, John.
Oh, thank you. I'm really enjoying this. I'm glad we got to do this.
Right on,
Yeah,
man.
out of my comfort zone. I'm not like I was like I'm not ready.
Well, you know, it's funny. I said to myself, I said, after I spoke to you the first time, I'm like, you know, this is really interesting because this guy makes such not explosive, such vibrant music, but you're quiet, like you're natural, you know,
Yeah.
you're not like the guy, you know, running around the stage, you know.
No, that's never been me. I found that when the first started doing that, it just was like, oh no, this is the beginning of the end. Those great moves. You're like, oh, just like, you know, have a beer and a cigarette, you know, get your trench coat back on and please.
Yeah.
Everybody loves that the most.
No, but I thought of that. And I say, I wonder how this goes. But usually, and I don't know why, the guys that tend to be more quiet always have the longer conversations. It's almost like I don't know what happens, but I'm
There's
grateful.
more anger. There's more anger and sadness.
Let it out, man. It's good.
Small residual pain, you know. Yeah, I mean, and talking of Japan, I mean, what a country. You know, the Zematis guitars that I had a
Yeah.
Zematis at one point. And I have friends that have Zematis guitars. I didn't have an electric and an acoustic. It wasn't very good. It was okay, but it wasn't very good. It was the end of George's career. I bought it in, you know, late 80s or something. It was okay, but it was not, you know, a J45. Nah, that's a guitar. But the latest guitars, I think the acoustics were like, eh. The electrics, obviously, very beautiful, handcrafted, gunsmithery all over. Just this fantastic, you know, George Harrison, Keith Richards, you know, James Honeyman Scott, one of my indie friends who's got about 5 of them, can't believe it. You know, the company went out of business after George died. They sold it to a Japanese company, Greco.
Okay.
Greco make 2 types of Zematis guitars. They make the Greco, which is about 3,000, and then they make the Greco Zematis, which is 10,000.
Holy shit!
Just for a stock guitar, 10 Gs.
That's.
I don't know if you like the tones. I think they're okay. I don't think they. I mean, I can't really ever listen to a record and go, "That's a Zematis guitar." You know, like you can with a Les Paul.
With a Strat or the Gibson or a Telly or a Fender. Yeah, Strat. Yeah, for sure.
But they started a while back because the Japanese are culturally so enamored with Western, especially pop culture. They started collecting old guitars, you know, Fenders and Gibsons, but they started I guess it was one guy or 2 guys started a Zematis museum in Tokyo.
That's
and it's
wild.
crammed full of these $250,000 guitars, which is basically what they retail for. You look up any Zematis now, you're not gonna get one for under 200,000.
That's nuts, man.
Yeah. Not a George Zematis anyway. You know, you might get one that was later, but the Greco Zematis, like I said, they're just you know, they make the exact models. They make the Keith Richards one, which is like the gun enamel on the side, you know, the aluminium faceplate with the gunmetal truss rod cover, and the hand machined bridges and saddles and everything. But I think the pickups were, I think they were Damasio
That's
pickup.
interesting. You'd figure for a guitar that much, you'd have,
Yeah, hand wound
yeah,
by virgins. You
nothing
know,
wrong with DiMarzio pickups, but
right,
I'm just saying that's really
right.
weird.
Yeah, hand wound by somebody. You know. Anyway, um, but it was just incredible to me that this whole culture is built around this guitar. This one particular guitar. It's
That
just,
is weird. Well, it's
it's,
funny. If you can see that black Strat I have there,
yeah,
that's a Japanese Strat. I'll tell you, man, I'm in love with it,
yeah,
and I'm like, uh, they're the only you can only get the cool colors, Fender old colors like uh, Fiesta Red or Shell Pink. They don't make them anymore unless you have to drop $5,000 for a custom guitar.
right,
You can get them Japan guitars that just the cool
right.
colors like that.
Yeah, the made in Japan guitars. A lot of them are good. And then there was the Tokai Springy Strat that was,
Yeah,
that was kind
yeah.
of. I mean, my to be honest with you, my go-to guitar now is a '50s road worn Mexicaster.
Man,
It,
Fender makes some great guitars.
I mean, that was like I bought it on eBay for like $800, I think. Oh,
That's what I paid for this.
and it's the neck is fantastic,
Same here,
and
man.
I can pick it up, put it down. The tone controls. I never really played a Strat like I play this one.
Yeah, that's
I
cool,
really
man.
kind of gotten into the different pickup selections
And there's a big difference, and each one of those really has a value in a certain place.
yes,
I
yeah,
really enjoy I'm in love with this Strat. Now I'm looking for more. This is the only bad thing, man. It's just like cocaine.
yeah,
You
it's a drug,
just
isn't it?
I should have another one. Like,
Yeah,
why?
yeah.
Um, all right, two questions. Most important lesson that life or your business has taught you?
Um, trust your instincts.
That's great
You know,
advice for anybody,
because
man.
I have come across times when I've given people the benefit of the doubt, and I could tell that they were lying about something, like something major, like really major. And you should always go with your instincts, follow your instincts,
Yeah.
because they're very rarely are they ever wrong.
Yeah.
When you really know somebody, and and they again, this is going back to the days of the band, when we were
Sure.
the, when we were all doing our thing. There were a couple of instances where I knew I was going against my better judgment. One of them was when uh, I said yes to Richard in firing Roger and Duncan, who, you know, they technically left, but he made it so difficult for them to stay, so they technically left.
Right.
Gone with my instinct. I should have stood fast and not been worried about the outcome, but I should have had a little, you know, with everything that went down, everything that happened. That was that was the single most worst decision I've ever made in my life, and it
Really?
haunts me to this day.
Wow.
I will never ever be able to put that behind me.
Do they know that, those guys?
I've told them as much, you
Good.
know, um, but it's the single worst decision I ever made was to not have the ability to disseminate what was really happening, and to not have the foresight to realize what this would mean in the long run. You know,
Right. The beginning of the end, so to speak.
beginning and the end of
Yeah.
that chapter. Now, there will be others who will say and will argue, oh, yes, well, the best album was Mirror Moves, or
Right.
the best album, fine, that's okay. But I think for me personally,
For
that was
you,
the
yeah.
thing.
Totally
And
get
then,
it.
the other thing is, like, I just trusted God.
Yeah.
I still second guess, but now I'm a little bit more. I take my time a little bit more, and I
That's
still do
that's
dumb shit, but
that's the good thing about getting older too. You give a shit less about the outcome as other people perceive it, and
yeah, or
making
what you look
peace with
like.
yourself. Yeah. No, but making peace with yourself is like
Yeah,
that's becomes like, you know what, this works for me. It may be uncomfortable for him or her, but I got to take care of myself on this one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And thanks for sharing that. That was cool. And last question is, what's been the biggest change in your personality, John, over the last 10 years? And how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Well, I think I've slowed down a lot. I do a lot less stupid stuff,
Amen for
or
that.
questionable things. Um, I don't know. I think I have more respect for my past now than I did at the time.
It's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
You know, I just kind of look at it and say, well, I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, but I also worked really hard. And I did make some mistakes, and I did make some bad choices, and I did make some bad calls. But at the end of the day, I'm still here.
Right.
I'm still making music. I'm still learning. Um, and although I'm a bit of a gearhead, I know that I can't go down that rabbit hole anymore. I mean, I will still make the occasional purchase. No, let's not go. No, no saints. But
But at least you could sell a guitar to fund it now, you know?
yeah, yeah. I don't. I guess I try to take as many risks as I possibly can musically, because I think that that's kind of what it's about. Um, but I'm also perhaps I mean I love to experiment still. You know, I remember a time when I didn't have a pickup for an acoustic guitar, and I wanted to have a pickup in it. But I had a Sony Walkman that I placed the mic inside the guitar, put it on record, taped it on the thing.
That's
And
so
that's great.
cool.
Yeah, I think it's on a song called All That Money Wants.
That's cool. I'm going to give that a listen.
I mean, that's part of the sound. I mean, some of it was picked up by the mic, but I know that some of it was just definitely an experiment. And I'd heard that Keith Richards used to do that. And after the fact, I didn't realize it until I read his book. And that's kind of what he used to do. Was he used to the old Philips tape recorders never had a limiter in them, so you could drive the mic harder by turning up the volume. So those acoustic guitar parts, which sound like electric, are actually acoustic, and like some
That's
of the
cool.
earlier Stones records. Yeah.
Very cool. Man, thank you for everything. I want to just tell people where, and any final words of wisdom.
Um, just follow your heart. I think I think you have to be honest to true. Try and stay as true to yourself as you can. Don't take any shit.
Yeah, man. I agree with you there.
And when you think someone's lying to you, trust your gut.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Hey, listen, let me tell people where to find you. First of all, you can find Jan, if you're not familiar with the Furs, or if you haven't listened to the Furs, well, I'll go back and revisit your catalog. John was a pretty important part, an extremely important part in both the writing and the creation of all that music, and it wouldn't have been the Psychedelic Furs without him. I would really encourage you to listen to Satellite Paradiso. It is their album is just amazing. If you don't have a lot of time, listen to the last track, Touch the Sky. It's about as perfect psychedelic rock. It's just a great track. He's got some amazing guitar work on the whole. Closeout is a 5-minute guitar solo. It's just amazing. And you can find all of this stuff on johnashtonmusic.com. Also, if you're interested in hooking up with John to help work on some production or engineering for yourself or your band, or you want to hire him to lay down some tracks, go to his website. Again, it's John Ashton, ASHTON music.com. And there's a contact tab there. Give him some links and stuff so he at least knows what you're doing and your sound, and let him know why you're interested in working with him. And so he can get back to you in a cognizant and normal manner to respond. Anything else that I could promote for you?
No, I mean, I hope, I think, hopefully we'll get some live music back, and there'll be some bands to go and see. So, please support your artists, they work because they have to.
Yeah.
You know, people ask me like, why do you make music? Well, it's kind of a part of it is a creative process, you know. Um, and it's I do it because I have to. I pick up a guitar and play because I kind of enjoy doing it. But when something happens out of that, and I feel like I want to record it or make it, you know, more of it, that's something inside of me trying to still be creative.
Yeah.
I do believe that, you know, there's still a lot of good stuff out there that we don't necessarily get to hear because there is a lot of stuff out there.
Tons.
A ton, exactly.
Well, I'll be
So,
looking forward to the next Satellite Paradiso record. Come back on the show. Would love to promote it, man.
oh, thank you so much, Craig.
It'd be great. I'd be great, ideally, if I'm in the city one time and I look down and I see Satellite Paradiso. That would be so cool to come see you guys play. And I'm not just blowing smoke. It's a great record, man. You guys got
Thank
nice
you.
chemistry together. And
Thank
like I
you.
said, you and John work. The whole band is super tight, you know, but
Yeah, well, it's definitely some seasoned professionals
totally.
in there. You know, Fred and Frank definitely. Fred, you know, Fred's got the pipes of a hero.
I was listening. I'm like, man, this guy's not 25, but he certainly sounds like it.
Yeah, it can belt them out.
Yeah,
And,
I
you
was.
know, and Frank is a very cool, inventive drummer. Um, and he's good under the hood. You know, we have a lot of you know, MIDI issues that we try to replace things, and he's very good at that. Also super sweet guy. Um, and Robert Burke Warren, our bass player, current bass player, has been sort of with us um, since we started to play out again. Because the first iteration was with Sarah Lee. Sorry.
Right. No, it's cool.
And she's kind of had, you know, no time to deal with, you know, playing live. So we, you know, harness Robert's playing, and he's great. He's a great songwriter and a great singer. Check him out. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on. He's got his own solo albums. Robert Burke Warren.
The English?
On Facebook, find him on Twitter, and you can
Is
find
he
him.
English?
No, but he may as well be.
That's such an English last name, Burke
Yeah,
Point. You guys do that a lot. You have, like,
It's probably Scottish or something. I've never asked him.
you know, another joy about talking to you, it's almost like the only person I ever get to, it's like all my wife's expressions have just been validated. I'm like,
Yeah.
she talks the same way, just like little subtleties, man. You're like very English still, like just some of the little colloquialisms. And I'm like, oh, it's really, it just reminds me of my wife. It's really funny because we speak the same language, but we don't.
Right. And the English always sort of answer a question with another question. I know, right? I bet you didn't know I was going to say that, did you?
Hey, man, hang on 1 second. Let me wrap this up. Thank you for everything. It's really been a joy. A great guy. I'm really glad to get to, and thanks for all the lifetime of great music you made, man. I really
thank you
appreciate
so
all
much.
of it.
I'm so sorry the little doggies are barking.
No, it's all good, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks to John Ashton for everything. Again, check out Satellite Paradiso. Also go to johnashtonmusic.com. And if you're interested in working with John, either as a producer or an engineer, or have him work on some tracks for your music, hit the contact form on John Ashton Music and let him know. And most important, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. There you go. Be nice. Go play a guitar and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Brother, thank you so much for everything, John.
You're welcome. Peace and love to you, Greg.
Likewise, man.